The Oklahoma Sooners are bringing in a very experienced offensive coordinator to help with their offense going into 2024. Let's discuss Kevin Johns coming up on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer, and the top story of today is the Oklahoma Sooners are set to hire Kevin Johns as an offensive analyst, according to a story and report from George Stoya of Sooner Scoop. Now, Kevin Johns has been around. He's done a lot of good work with a lot of really highly thought of offensive minds across the country, whether it's working with Kevin Wilson up at Indiana, being Duke's offensive coordinator in recent years. The Sooners are getting an experienced offensive play caller to help that transition into the SEC, that transition to Jackson Arnold.
Don't laugh. Hold your laughter until all the remarks have been finished. Kevin Johns was a finalist for the Iowa offensive coordinator position. So there were a number of Hawkeye fans that this was their guy. They wanted Kevin Johns. They did not want Tim Lester. Now, they've since sort of talked themselves into Tim Lester, as fans often do. But Kevin Johns, because of his history with Riley Leonard at Duke, he's sort of viewed as the individual that went a long way in developing Riley Leonard and the Blue Devils passing attack. There's a lot of respect out there in coaching circles for Kevin Johns. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel like Oklahoma just went and found somebody that's going to be an offensive coordinator this time next year. Now, where that's at for Kevin Johns remains to be seen, but I think this is a big-time addition to the analyst role for Oklahoma, which this has been something that Brent Venables has put a lot of value into, and head coaches of past have been analysts at Oklahoma, and head coaches, again, now have been analysts at Oklahoma. When you think about Matt Wells and others. So this has been a coveted position with Oklahoma, and it's been something that Brent Venables has really taken very seriously, John. And I think that they went and found another guy that basically is another OC and a quarterbacks coach for Oklahoma. And guess what is going on for OU this season? Well, you've got a quarterback in Jackson Arnold that set a second start, jumping into the SEC, another voice that has mentored somebody like Riley Leonard. That doesn't hurt to have around.
No, not at all. This is a guy in Kevin Johns who has been around college football for quite some time now. In the early 2010s, initially worked with Kevin Wilson for quite a long time. Was with Indiana from 2011 to 2016 as a co-OC, quarterbacks coach, wide receivers coach as well. Was on Tim Lester's staff at Western Michigan in 2017. And then in 2018, spent a year with Cliff Kingsbury. Then 2019 with Memphis. And then with Duke in 2022 and 2023, serving on Mike Elko's staff. Now, Elko left Duke for Texas A&M and wasn't retained by the Blue Devils when Manny Diaz got hired to take over for Elko. So he steps into that Seth Luttrell role from the last year, where you have a guy that has been around and coached a lot of college football, more than a decade now. He played quarterback at Dayton, so he's experienced at the position, even if it's not the high level, Power 5 experience, but he's got a lot of experience as a play caller. And I think just having another voice in the room, another voice that can talk with your quarterback throughout the week in game planning, in preparation, in evaluation of his previous game. It never hurts to have another voice that can kind of speak into some things and maybe see a little bit where maybe the quarterback isn't able to see, or what the offensive coordinator is not really able to dive into because he's pretty busy as an offensive coordinator, game planning and getting things ready for the entire offense. This gives Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins, Brendan Zurbrugg an experienced voice on offense, a Casey Thompson, all these guys in the quarterback room, an experienced offensive voice that can really speak into the position for them this offseason as they get ready for spring ball. I mean, that's getting ready to start up. I believe March 11th is the first practice for the Oklahoma Sooners. So everything's about to hit the ground running for Kevin Johns. And, you mentioned he's probably an offensive coordinator somewhere next offseason, if not, interviewing for head coaching jobs. Or if, like what happened this offseason, a guy like Jeff Lebby took the head coaching job at Mississippi State, you were able to promote your offensive analyst, Seth Luttrell, to offensive coordinator. Perhaps something like that could happen again next offseason if Seth Luttrell lights the world on fire as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think I said head coach's past to, present, and obviously meant with Matt Wells to point out offensive coordinator and associate head coach with Kansas State. But yes, head coach's past in Luttrell and Matt Wells in this type of role for Oklahoma. And the path forward has been proven that, look, for Seth Luttrell, Oklahoma's offensive coordinator alongside Joe John Finley now. Matt Wells, guess what? He's an offensive coordinator again at Kansas State. So the path from OU forward into that type of role, we don't have to look very far. It's happened this offseason for Oklahoma. And again, if, as you pointed out, John, this thing is just great for OU and for Arnold and for Luttrell and Joe John Finley and Kevin Johns, who knows what the immediate future brings in 1 year's time. This could be your next offensive coordinator. Kevin Johns could be. It doesn't have to necessarily be somewhere other than Oklahoma. That could be a possibility, but of course, it is never a bad thing to bring somebody in that has sat in that seat, has been an OC, has been a quarterback's coach, has been a number of places, including in this portion of the country, right, at Texas Tech. So somebody that has been around this part of the country is obviously positive too for Oklahoma in terms of building relationships and everything that goes into the recruiting end of the equation for Oklahoma. So I think it's a big time get for OU. This is a name that was kind of just left on the board at the end of this coaching cycle. And for Kevin Johns, it's a good fit for him to be somewhere that, look, this offense for Oklahoma over the last quarter century has been one of the best offenses to be a part of. So he's got a chance to enhance his stock or keep it where it's been and then go find that next gig. So it kind of just makes sense for everybody, I feel like.
Yeah, is Brent Venables creating his own little Nick Saban coaching rehabilitation center there in Norman? It'll be interesting to see how this kind of helps to develop or I guess re-establish coaches that are out there that might not have a place to land during coaching transition. So I think it's an intriguing hire. I'll be curious to see how it affects Oklahoma this spring, how it helps Jackson Arnold develop throughout the offseason as he gets ready for his first season as the starting quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. We got a couple players that are heavily projected now to land with the Oklahoma Sooners. Who are these guys and how might they impact the Sooners defense? We'll discuss coming up next on Locked On Sooners.
Get buckets with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot. And as we like to share with you, again, those early numbers, they're out. I know that's NBA and this is college football, but hey, this is Locked On Sooners, baby. So OU Texas, the Cotton Bowl, still 9.5-point dog. Sooners to Texas. And those win totals for Oklahoma, looking at 7.5 in that first year in the SEC from FanDuel. But you can check all of that out at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
On Monday, the Oklahoma Sooners received several projections favoring them for a pair of defensive line targets that could be very impactful for the 2025 recruiting class. Let's start with Kole Briehler, a product of the Hun School out of New Jersey. If that name sounds familiar to you, that's where the Sooners were able to pull Logan Howland, a 2023 offensive line prospect that obviously we're still waiting on the breakout from him, but somebody who is a very, very intriguing target, had big time offers across the upper Midwest through the Big Ten and out East as well. Well, now Kole Briehler looks to be that next potential addition up out of New Jersey, a 6'3", 270-pound defensive tackle, somebody who has the ability to play inside as a 3-tech, that defensive tackle that plays between the guard and the tackle, or as a defensive end in a 3-man alignment, like we know Oklahoma likes to do. They want to play both 4-man, 3-man alignments. So Kole Briehler, he's a 4-star according to Rivals, a 3-star with 247 Sports and with On3, but rated as a top 60 player at the position. And again, Oklahoma's looking to continue to build that defensive line depth through the recruiting ranks.
This is just me sort of looking at the recruitment of Logan Howland and Marco Linez, by the way, from the Hun School as well. That's an Iowa quarterback, signed with the Hawkeyes a couple of years ago. Probably this part of the country doesn't get the same sort of evaluation as other parts of the country. It's not in the South. It's not in California. It's not in Ohio. So it's not thought to be as much of a college football recruiting hotbed. So that could be working against Briehler a little bit on the recruiting front. And yet you said, 4-star from Rivals, 3-star from 247 Sports. So he's on the radar, but probably playing somewhere else, he might be a little higher up on the radar is fair to say. His tape looks good. I like his get off from the line of scrimmage. He's got a nice little bull rush. And I mean, he looks like somebody that could be a really good defensive tackle for Oklahoma in the future. They could probably play him outside too if they really wanted to as well. He looks like he could maybe do a little bit of both. But what do we think? More naturally, a defensive tackle?
Yeah, probably. He just looks like somebody that I feel like fits maybe in a Nigel Smith type of role, where maybe he flashes a little bit more inside because he's going to have a little bit more quickness, but it looks like the strength is going to be there to be able to handle playing inside as well. But somebody that you can bounce out to defensive end if you need to play him in a 3-man alignment. But generally probably going to play more as a defensive tackle. I think you just look at him and he just has that look of the defensive tackle that's just going to work his tail off and just physically try to beat up everybody. I don't know if you've seen his picture over at 247 Sports, but it kind of looks a little like a mugshot. You're not somebody you're going to want to cross paths with, or at least make upset Kole Briehler. But we love to do the offer check, right? The offer check always kind of gives us a bit of an indication about how somebody is looked upon on the recruiting ranks. Miami, Duke, Florida, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland, Michigan, Penn State, Pitt, Syracuse, USC, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Just kind of the notable offers there. If Michigan's offering you, Penn State, you've got my attention.
Yeah, a bunch of the East Coast who's who, right? But then, as you pointed out, a sprinkling of the Southeast, Miami and Florida mixed in there. Now, obviously, OU, we know. USC is on the offers list. So it's an interesting, really coast-to-coast set of offers for Briehler, which speaks to the fact that he is, of course, very well thought of amongst Power 5 programs.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Being out of New Jersey, you're not going to necessarily get the same love, similar to a prospect that might come out of Oklahoma, but maybe less so. just the number of recruiting analysts that are going to get up there and watch the Hun school play might not be as prevalent as the guys that get down to Florida or California or Texas or even Oklahoma to be able to make that evaluation occur. But another player that the Oklahoma Sooners have been heavily projected to land in this recruiting cycle, but picked up another projection for on Monday. This latest projection for CJ Nickson, the Weatherford edge rusher, comes from Steve Wiltfong, director of football recruiting at 247 Sports. This comes after guys like Josh McQuistion of Sooner Scoop, Brandon Drum of OU Insider, and Colin Kennedy of 247 Sports, Sooners Illustrated, had issued projections favoring the Sooners over the last few weeks. Now, CJ Nickson, who is 247 Sports top rated player in the state of Oklahoma, again, looks heavily projected to land with the Sooners.
That's great news. You get the Wilt-fonged bomb in there is typically a good sign. Not a 100% science, but generally speaking, it typically works out to where he's got the pick right. So you start thinking about CJ Nickson and mixing that with Alexander Shield Knight, who is already in this class, Kamari Moore, who I really like out of Lee Summit North, that's in this class, John. And it would be a nice little defensive line start for Oklahoma with plenty of other names, I'm sure, along the way still to go. And, of course, Briehler, a name that we just talked about, which could be and is, right, gaining recruiting prediction buzz for Oklahoma. So maybe not too awfully long from now, we're going to have a couple more names in this 25 cycle to add to the defensive line board for Oklahoma. So the coaches at OU, Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis, they keep reeling in top flight talent, it looks like.
Yeah, CJ Nickson's a player that could probably play wide receiver and start for a lot of college football teams in the country. He's just that athletic. He's got that many tools in his tool belt. But Oklahoma's looking to put him as an edge rusher, a defensive end, and with a 6'5" frame, 220 pounds right now, I think they've got a really good shot at developing somebody who can be a big-time difference maker for the defensive line. And they got to continue to build that. Yes, you've got R. Mason Thomas, you've got PJ Adebaware coming off the edge right now, but you don't have a whole lot of depth after that. And so you got to continue to stack really talented edge rushers along that defensive line moving forward so that your pass rush is really, really good, not just one year, but every single year. Now you've got a really nice 2024 group in Nigel Smith and Danny Okoye and Wyatt Gilmore to add to that, but you got to keep going. And this one for CJ Nickson, if they can get this, it's another really talented pass rusher with a lot of potential that could be an impactful player for their defensive line. And he's offered to play basketball too. So he could be a nice little wing addition for the Oklahoma Sooners men's basketball team, as well as he's kind of getting his feet underneath him. The dude is just an incredible athlete that's going to make big time plays both on the football field and on the hardwood. If Oklahoma is able to land that commitment, it would be the 7th in-state prospect that they've gotten a commitment for in the 2025 cycle. And that doesn't even include the recruitment of Nate Roberts, the tight end, as well. Oklahoma's just locking up the state in the 2025 cycle.
Yeah, and when it's a big year that has clearly a nice collection of Division I and Power 5 talent, you got to clean up in-state. And the early return is that Oklahoma's doing that. And I have no doubt that it certainly feels like the writing on the wall, especially with CJ Nickson, is about to be there for Oklahoma. Two sport athletes, man. Here lately, football and basketball, or football and baseball, it's been awfully friendly to Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's going to slow down at any point in the near future as well. So we have some news on the defensive line front. You've probably seen it discussed elsewhere, but Jacobs Lacey is forced to medically retire. We're going to talk about what that means for the Oklahoma Sooners defensive line room, and we'll just talk through Jacob Lacey as well coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. They've got class exclusive Google built-in, your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. My wife and I just this last week in Colorado Springs got the Nissan Rogue. That's what we got from the rental car company. It worked out really well. And driving the city streets in Colorado Springs, and then, getting an hour outside of Colorado Springs, driving the windy roads down the dirt road to get to the cabin that we were staying in. It was perfect. It rode great. It was comfortable. We spent a lot of time in it, and it handled the snow and the wet and the ice all beautifully. We felt very safe as we were driving those windy roads in Colorado, dealing with some of the inclement weather. But it was a great car. You'd be very, very, very safe. We highly recommended it whenever we dropped it off and we did our review with the Enterprise rental company as well. But if you're not looking for that, you want to go a little bit bigger, go check out the Nissan Pathfinder. It has room up to 8 with an expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. So Jacob Lacey, who had dealt with blood clot issues prior to the 2023 season after transferring from Notre Dame, apparently dealing with them again this offseason, and Brent Venables hinted at it. It had been speculated other places. Venables hinted at it on the Oklahoma breakdown with Gabe Eichert and Teddy Lehman, but then Jacob Lacey kind of confirmed it on social media as well, that he'd be forced to medically retire. And if you just want to go look at the traditional box score and look at sacks and tackles for loss, that might not fully indicate Jacob Lacey's importance to the Oklahoma Sooners defensive line. He led the interior defensive line in snaps in 2023, just going to show how important he was to that defensive line rotation and to the Oklahoma Sooners. It is a loss. This is a guy that was expected to start for you this coming up season, and now your depth obviously takes a hit. For Lacey, obviously the most important thing is his health. You want him to be okay and not have to worry about blood clots. They can be fatal. A blood clot in the leg, it could cause big time problems in your lungs, in your brain, anywhere. And so it's not something to take lightly. And we hope that Jacob is okay and mentally and physically doing well. And it's going to be a loss for the Sooners.
I just feel so bad for Jacob Lacey because you've poured so much energy and effort and time and thought into being great and playing college football, and to have that last year ripped away, I'm sure that emotionally Jacob is gutted. Hopefully he gets to a point of peace with this is what's next in life. But understanding that for Jacob the person right now, this isn't what you signed up for. That's tough. That's a curveball in life. And unfortunately in life, those things do happen at times. And a pulmonary embolism twice it's scary. It's freaky. There's nothing else to say about it other than it's potentially life altering or life threatening. And so, yeah, first things first, his health, wish him the best. And Jacob, if for some reason this gets back to you or you watch this, there is life outside of playing the game of football, and it's going to be okay, man. So just know that the beat goes on, my friend, but we're feeling for you because we know that you put a lot into it, and that just stinks. It stinks that it didn't work out a different way. On the football side for Oklahoma, the impact, look, here's somebody that played 385 snaps for Oklahoma a season ago. That's, right toward the top of the board for Oklahoma in terms of defensive line snaps for the Sooners. So it's a legitimate loss for Oklahoma opportunity arrives for others. But yeah, Oklahoma will feel the loss. I'm sure they will.
Now you are expecting guys like Davin Sears, Grayson Halton, Ashton Sanders, Marcus Strong to develop and take a step and maybe fill that role. But these are guys that haven't played much college football. Yeah, you got Dejon Terry coming back, and that's going to help you. But again, beyond that, you're kind of limited in your experience, and you need guys with experience going into the SEC, getting ready to do battle with some of those big time offensive lines. Obviously you got David Stone and Jaden Jackson coming in, and that'll help push the younger guys to continue to improve, because Stone and Jackson might very well earn playing time in their own right. But it's definitely going to be a question mark going into the season. I think we felt okay about it. We would like to see more production, from the splashy categories, but this is still a defensive line that finished, I think it was at the top in tackles for loss or no gain in 2023. So, those interior defensive linemen, they were doing their job, mucking things up, make things really, really difficult on the interior, and allowing your edge rushers and your linebackers to get into the backfield and make plays. So it'll be interesting to see how Oklahoma addresses it. Is it going to be, hey, let's trust our young guys to develop and see where they go from here? Or are they going to have to dip back into the transfer portal when it reopens after spring?
It's all reasonable and fair questions. Does this also open the door a little quicker to, and maybe it was going to be that way regardless, but David Stone, Jaden Jackson, simply out of need now, and talent. I don't get it twisted, but those guys, I think, again, you think about their ability to factor in quickly for Oklahoma now because of this and because of necessity. That is, I think, one of the other items that happens here, perhaps, for Oklahoma.
And with spring ball just around the corner, we're going to find out pretty quickly who starts to step up, who starts to kind of make some hay in spring ball to earn some snaps and work their way up the depth chart. We've seen Oklahoma's willing to give guys opportunity if they can learn that playbook and physically be prepared for the mental and physical grind of a college football season. Josh, is there anything else that you want to touch on here before we get out of here?
Well, just on the subject of new arrivals, we're going to get to hear from Brent Venables later this week as he sort of opens the spring season. And it's my understanding that every newcomer to Oklahoma will be made available in 2 separate 40-minute sessions. So whatever that brings us in terms of media availability this week should be interesting to follow. So keep your eyes and ears open for that, as all of a sudden it's going to turn into a legitimate news week for Oklahoma football as really they kick off their spring season.
And we'll have it covered all spring long here on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that notification bell and that subscribe button to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.